Hi everyone. My name is Ali. I'm a PhD candidate at Northeastern University, and today I'm going to be talking about ad delivery algorithms or ad optimization algorithms. Essentially, algorithms that decide which ad is relevant to which users. These algorithms are very central to how our online advertising systems work today, and I specifically want to talk about how they affect political advertising, where we have found they can introduce price discrimination between different political candidates, and they can enforce people's political bubbles, possibly causing more polarization. So, the idea that these algorithms can be discriminatory has existed for quite some time. For instance, Latanya Sweeney back in 2013 talked about how Google searches for African American sounding names returned search results for this website called Instant Checkmate, which is a background checking website with keywords like arrested, suggesting that these people have criminal histories. But when the same thing was done for European sounding white names, these effects weren't observed. Over the years, other people have also looked at how ads can be problematic. For instance, these pieces by ProPublica look at how the targeting tools provided by Facebook can be used by advertisers to exclude certain users. For instance, they can use these tools to exclude poll workers from seeing job ads, or use the racial targeting features to exclude people from seeing housing and employment opportunities, which can be illegal in the United States. Other work, for instance, done by myself and my colleagues in the past, has shown how these effects can also exist on the delivery side of things. So even if an advertiser wants to target broadly and include everyone, the optimization algorithm and the relevance estimation algorithms can decide that certain ads are relevant to certain gender or ethnic groups, and then that can cause discrimination even when the advertiser might not have intended that. And that distinction between the delivery side of things and the targeting side of things is important because you can see the whole advertising system in these two phases, where the first phase is the targeting phase, where the advertiser is creating an ad, deciding who the target audience is, and then they hand over the ad to this black box platform, which we don't have a clear understanding of. Here, the platform is running the entire show. They're running an auction. They're deciding who a certain ad is relevant to, and eventually they want to keep their users engaged, their advertisers happy, eventually trying to maximize their profit. And that's the part that we're interested in understanding here. So the question we're trying to talk about today is whether ad platforms can selectively show political ads. And as you might have figured out from this image, I'm going to mostly limit the conversation to the US political system, because at the time we were running this study, it was election season. And also, we're going to limit our discussion to Facebook's advertising platform. It's one of the most mature systems out there. It has all the advanced features that you can hope a system to have. And it's also extremely central to elections in the United States, where it's heavily used. And I want to emphasize that the idea that ad platforms can be held accountable for how they're showing political ads, it's not entirely new. Things like the so-called equal time rule have existed in US legislation, for instance, from back in the day in 1927, which requires the broadcast licensees make airtime available to all candidates for the same office on equivalent terms. So not only making airtime available to all candidates, but also on equivalent terms. So if rules like this have existed, and it's only natural to ask these questions of online advertising platforms. So, how would you go about collecting data to understand these effects? You could use transparency tools that these platforms provide themselves, which Facebook, this is a screenshot from Facebook system, which is giving information about how much money each candidate has spent and the breakdown of how this money was spent. But one core limitation here is that we don't have access to the targeting information. And since we want to understand that latter part of the whole system, where we want to understand what's happening in the delivery phase, we want to control for the targeting. And we can't have access to that information from this data set. Another approach could be to make something like N by Use Ad Observer, where you can make a plugin which is capable of pulling ads from people's news feeds and along with the targeting information, and you can see how people are being targeted. But plugins are difficult to maintain and deploy on such a large scale because ad platforms are constantly fighting against ad monitors and ad blockers. Also, Facebook might send you a cease and desist, asking you to take down your plugin and delete your data. So that might be a problem. Our approach here is to actually run ads. This is a screenshot from Facebook's advertising system. You can see Facebook provides a lot of information, how many people were reached, how many people clicked on it, and tons of other information that you can query. What this allows us to do is control for the targeting. So we can create two copies of ads which have exactly the same targeting, and then we can see how differences arise in the delivery phase of things. So we can take ads like these, for instance, a Donald Trump ad and a Bernie Sanders ad serving merchandise. We chose these two candidates in particular because at the time we started designing these experiments, they were the top two spenders on Facebook. So our ads would have the least impact on how their campaigns were affected. And we want to understand, for instance, for these two ads, how Facebook treats them differently. And so what we do is we target these ads to both a conservative audience and a liberal audience using tools that Facebook has provided, such as an interest in liberal politics in the United States with an intersection of an interest in the Democratic Party, and the same for the conservative users. So what we're trying to do is trying to emulate a candidate who's trying to reach everyone that they can and trying to observe how the system might treat them differently. So we target both of these ads to both of those audiences at the same time of day, pay the same amount of money, and we observe that the platform itself can make a difference. For instance, here you can see on the left panel is the fraction of Democrats that each ad reached out of all the people that it reached. You can see that over three geographies, each row is a different town in the US, and the right side shows the fraction of the audience, the size of the audience. Over multiple towns that we tried to target this ad to, Bernie Sanders' ad reached a higher fraction of liberal voters than the Donald Trump ad. And you might say that this might be because we're targeting too narrowly. We're doing this intersection of an interest in the liberal politics with an interest in the Democratic Party. But even if you target more broadly, just with an interest in liberal or conservative politics, we see that the same effect persists. It's a little less pronounced when the audience size is larger because the platform has more leeway in how it can pick people, but it's clear that the platform is making some decisions here, regardless of the advertiser asking. And this effect isn't just limited to merchandise ads, even if you pick actual issue ads that these candidates have run. So these are ads that we actually duplicated from these campaigns and we ran. We see that the same effect persists. Now, this might make some sense that the platform is trying to ensure that the users who engage with the ad most are making these are getting these ads, but we want to understand a bit deeply how these things are working. So we take these two ads and we try to run them for longer, a week actually, and we pay $100 a day for each of these ads. And again, we target both of these to both a liberal audience and a democratic and a conservative audience. This is, for instance, what happens when the Sanders ads goes to a liberal audience. You can see that over the 7 days, the reach starts to plateau at some point since we're exhausting the audience, but it does continue to deliver. The cost also continues to increase. But when you target a conservative audience, which might not align with the opinion, you can see that the reach drops significantly, which means fewer people are being reached and the cost goes up significantly, which means that the platform is giving you this friction in reaching people that might not agree with your message. The same happens for the Donald Trump ad, which was again targeted to both a conservative and a liberal audience. Uh, you can see that Donald Trump also, that ad also pays a higher price and reaches fewer people. If you look closely at the cost penalty itself, you can see that both ads paid somewhere between 2 and 3.5 times more to reach users that purportedly don't align with the campaign's message, according to Facebook's judgment of the ad of the content of the ad. Now, since these ads were running for such a long time, we were gaining a lot of impressions. People were commenting, and sometimes they were unhappy about the ads they were seeing. It's possible that people's interactions factored into how Facebook were deciding to show these ads. So we wanted to create ads that look exactly the same to Facebook, exactly the same to users, but completely different to Facebook. So we can create an ad like this, which is just a US flag asking you to register to vote. This is how it would look to a user. But to Facebook, we try to serve either a Bernie Sanders page or a Donald Trump page to control for any effect of the user interaction. How we do that is that we set up our server in a way where traffic coming from Facebook gets served a page which is either a Donald Trump page or a Bernie Sanders page, depending on what link we've set up. But if an actual user clicks on it, they get redirected to a federal web page where they can register to vote. This ensures that users see the exact thing, so any sort of telemetry effects are controlled for. And if you just click on it, they go to the exact same page, so any interaction they might have would be exactly the same. So based purely on the difference in content that we're giving to Facebook, again, we target both to liberal and conservative audiences. And we see that the Sanders ad reaches a higher fraction of Democrats from the total people it reaches, and the Trump ad reaches a smaller fraction of Democrats. And both candidates pay 40% more to reach candidates that don't align with their opinions. So to go back to that original question of whether platforms can affect how ads are shown, it's a clear yes. But what if an advertiser doesn't use targeting attributes provided by the platform? An advertiser doesn't target either liberals or conservatives. They just want to upload a list of people, a custom audience, and they just want to target broadly. To understand how these effects might appear in this situation, we borrow a technique from our earlier paper where we use location data to infer people's political leaning. I'm not going to go into too much detail about the methodology here. You can refer to our CSCW 2019 paper. But as an example, you can take the state of North Carolina and you can take public voter records, which have people's political leaning also listed in it. And you can break down the state into these areas where there are only Democratic voters in some regions and only Republican voters in other regions. And when Facebook reports you back the location, you can use that to infer how Facebook is showing these ads. We run the same issue ads. We target the state of North Carolina. And so here, in this case, the advertiser has no idea who they're targeting. And we find again that the Sanders ad goes to a disproportionately high number of Democrats. The Trump ad skews all the way to conservative users. Now, the advertiser isn't even aware of these things happening in the situation, but the platform is making these decisions. So to put all these things together, what do these things mean, these decisions that the platform is making? It means that the ad optimization algorithms as they are today, they play a huge role in controlling how these ads are shown. So any conversation about limiting targeting, talking about micro-targeting or voter suppression, or talking about campaign managers doing clever tricks with the targeting system, they're incomplete without acknowledging that the delivery algorithms themselves play a huge role in who gets to see these ads. And these ad platforms and algorithms as they exist today, they're opaque, self-regulated, and often self-serving. The goal here is to keep the users engaged. So these platforms can choose to strengthen people's filter bubbles and possibly cause polarization in our elections. And they can penalize advertisers who want to break these filter bubbles without any kind of accountability. This is an example of what happened to my ad account after running this entire study. In an environment where these platforms are constantly shirking any kind of scrutiny and don't want to be measured, measurement studies like this are extremely important. They're some of the best tools we have to understand how these platforms might be causing discrimination and the kinds of harms they can do. Understanding these effects, measuring them, is pretty much the first step in going ahead and solving these problems. I've listed my Twitter handle and my email address since this is going to be a virtual conference. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I am incredibly thankful to my collaborators and my mentors, Piotr, Alexandra, Alan, and Aaron from Upturn. And if you have any questions, please feel free to send them to me. Thank you.